Hi there, Mark here again, and welcome to part 1 of my build guide for the MF-01X chassis. This will eventually be a Mark II Escort when we get round to finishing it, but at the moment it's just following through the build guide for the chassis itself. So if you've got an MF-01X, it doesn't matter what body's going to be on at the end, then you should be able to follow along with this build guide. So let's get started. The first thing you need to do is open parts bag A. So the first real part of the build is step 3, which is the differential gears, and I have jumped ahead and built the second one. There are two exactly the same. You'll have to build this later on, so I've gone ahead and done it now so we can do this all together. Basically you need to get the parts here listed, match them up with the diagram to make sure everything's ready for the step. You'll need the diff spur gear and the cap. And basically I'll just show you putting it together dry. Obviously we'll put grease all over this lot, but it's very simple to do. Basically get your thrust washer, put that on the large bevel gear, drop that into the case, get the star shaft and put on the small bevels like so, and simply locate that in the 3 slots in the case like so. Then you need your second large bevel. The second thrust washer goes over the top, and then align these pins again with the slots. And finally do up the tiny little 2x8 self-tapping screws, and that's as simple as that. On to step 4, which is attaching the differential gear, or rear it says, differential gear. First thing you need to do is get this sponge tape that was in parts bag A and cut this small piece out. There's a size there that you have to match up on the diagram, and we've got to stick that onto this part A4, and that goes just there. And just a quick note, you might notice that I'm going to be swapping out the plastic bushings here for metal bearings, and also wherever I can, you've got the self tappers that are supplied. I'm going to be replacing those with these stainless steel button head hex screws. So get your part A4 with the case, and this part here looks like the motor carrier. That's part A7. And you can see there's these 2 points here that stick out, which locates through those 2 holes like so. And you attach that with a screw in there, there and there, 10mm screws. Then place your bearing or your bushing in that hole there. Your spur gear and your diff, I think that should be that way round, and get some grease on all of these gears. Put a bearing or bushing on each side of the spur. You've got the 40mm bar or shaft, goes through the middle there. Simply drop your diff there, and the end of that shaft's going to locate in the hole in the case, and they should mesh up like that. So as I say, get some grease on there, and it's on to step 5, which is the counter gear, which is this. So basically you just get your bearing or bushing, an 1150 into each side. Very simple step this, so it's just that. Then this small piece of sponge tape goes here, you can see it there, and as you might see, I've put some AW grease around here because we're going to seal up these 2 halves soon, stop the dust and dirt getting in. So straight to step 6, which it says is gearbox rear. So we're going to put this together now. So get your counter gear, get this smaller shaft, match it up to the diagram, that goes through, some grease on this, and that's going to locate into this hole here, like so. And then fit your 1150 bearing or bushing inside this hole here, and fit it all together. Yeah, it just clicks together quite nicely. Don't forget these 2 small pieces of sponge tape, they just go on the top there. Hope you can see that in this light. So yeah, there were 2 little pieces that kind of fit together there on the top, and then you've got your 3 10mm screws, which are going to go in these recesses, one here one here, and the third one in this hole here. Just get those done up and we'll go on to the next step, which is step 7, where we attach the rear damper stay, which is this part B7, and we fit these brass ball joints. Already fitted the one, so they go in the 2 top holes here, and it does say to apply some grease to the threads if it's a bit tight. I have put some grease on the threads, especially those stainless steel ones that I've been putting in. I've needed a bit of grease on those to help them go in. And then this simply locates on the other 2 holes there, and simply put your 2 10mm screws to hold it in place. Step 8 is checking the RC equipment, so you get all your electronics and connect it all up. Follow the diagram, set all your trims in neutral, fire it all up, and make sure that the servo is in the neutral position, and then disconnect, and we can carry on with this part here, the servo saver. So you need this plastic part, which is B14, and then you need your 2 5mm ball adapters or ball ends. Screw those in like so. Part P5 or P6, whichever fits your servo. Make sure you get the alignment of the servo correct, like this. That lug will be pointing straight down. Put it on as close to straight down as you can. Fit on the plastic spring, part P4. Then that part B14 just clips on at the top. You've got P1, which is the tiny plastic washer, and then whichever screw fits your servo. The next step is making up and attaching the steering rods, and it'll end up like this. So make sure you've got the one cup facing down and the other one facing up. Match it up with a diagram. Simply take your 32mm threaded bar and your 2 ball ends and just screw one on each end. Turn them against each other until you get the required length, and then simply snap one onto each of the ball ends. When you've done that, simply get this bracket B1, and we're going to attach the servo to this bracket. Note that the cutout there, the angle is pointing downwards. Okay, so it's flat at the top. Fit that on top of the bracket and use your 10mm screws and washers to put into the 4 holes. It does say that it's for a Tamiya TSU03 servo, but I think that's a pretty standard size servo, so if you've got a standard servo, that's the one to go for. There are other steps below that show you how to fit a servo if it's of a different size, but we'll just attach it as shown in step 10. It'll look like this when you're finished, so all you need to do is make sure that these gaps there, that one there, and the gap there are about equal, or as equal as you can get them, as it shows in the diagrams. And on to step 11, which is fitting that servo assembly into the half of the chassis, which is part A3. I've already fitted part C14, the softer plastic part there, with the 2 10mm screws. And basically what we need to do is to make sure that the centre of the servo, or the servo screw there, as you can see, it lines up with the centre line of the chassis. And with the stock fitting, which is using this part B18, mine didn't centre up. You do get 2 other parts, which are B17 and B16, and I found that I needed the thickest one to space mine out, so you'll see what I mean in a second if I get it fitted in. You put the spacer onto the end of that servo bracket there, your servo arm, put it through that hole, and then this slots in. A bit tricky to see on camera, like so. You might be able to see there that that slots in into the chassis half here. And then as we turn it over, you might be able to see now that there's the centre of the chassis, and it lines up with the centre of the screw in the servo. So yeah, I had to use that thicker one. It's shown here as the option, and then I also need the longer screws, which are 20mm long, to hold that into place. And they go in there and there. I'll just get those done up. Okay, with that done up, it's on step 12, but luckily I've already done the second differential, so on to step 13, which is fitting these gears into the front gearbox. So you've got a G1 and a GB3. You'll need to get some grease on these. I won't show doing that. You've got your bearings, your 1150 bearings or bushings that need to go one in each end of each gear. Your two metal shafts, which is a 40mm and a 30mm shaft, and you need this part, this red part here, which is an F1 I think, sorry, an F7, and that fits into the case there, and push your bearing into that. You got the longer bar for your G1 that goes in the top there, and the shorter bar goes through your GB3, the bearings or bushes, and into that slot there. Okay, easy as that. Straight on to step 14, which is the other side of the chassis case, A1, and I've already fitted on the C17 there with the two 10mm screws, and again you need that part F7. Push that in and put the bearing in place, and that's step 14. In step 15 we're going to close the two halves of the gearbox, or the two halves of the chassis. So you're going to need that differential gear that you prepared earlier. You're going to pop that into place. You need your 3x10 screws, and basically all we need to do, obviously, get some grease on all of these gears, and make sure that the steering arm goes through the hole. Make sure you locate that on the servo mount, and push it all together. And it's just your 3 screws, one in there, and one at the bottom there. The next step is to fit the whole chassis together. So we've got these two ends, and we need the bit in the middle here, and obviously that depends on the length of the chassis for your build. So there will be, or there are, 3 sets of instructions for steps 16 and 17. So obviously pick the one that's right for yours. Mine's the long wheelbase, 239mm, so we're following this. So we need these parts, which are B10 and B11, and they're going to go together like that. And then onto those we're going to fit parts B8 and B9. So the first thing we need to do is get B10 and B11, and you need a 10mm screw in each of these big holes here. So one in there, and one in there. Get these done up, and when that's done up, get the other parts, and they fit over the top. You can see there are lugs in there that line up, and now you can get the 4 screws in, one there, and in the other side, that one and that one. It's going to hold the two together, and then we need to finish off with a screw in that hole and a screw in that hole, all 10mm screws. Once those 4 pieces are put together, we simply attach that to the one half there, and slot the other one on like so. And there are 4 screws to put in, one there, one down there, one there, and one down there, and the same on the other side. So that's it all together. You can see the screws there that I've put in, because they're the stainless ones, nice and shiny. Yeah, and I've got to say, just feel really strong when it's all together. It's quite satisfying getting to this stage. So we'll just get the prop shaft on, which is step 17 and 18 I think. So for this step you're going to need your prop shaft, obviously. That big thing there, I've already partly assembled it. You're going to need 4 of your 850 bushings or bearings. You need 2 of these 10mm pins or shafts as it calls them, and you need 4 of these tiny plastic spacers, which are parts B2. And carefully look at these, because it isn't a flat kind of spacer, it has got a step on it. So there's a smaller diameter and a larger diameter, and the smaller diameter needs to be facing towards the bearing. I'll just show you that now. So I've already prepped this side, the other side's exactly the same. It does show here adding synthetic rubber cement to the pin to hold it in. I'm not exactly sure why, but I've used this stuff because it's flexible glue. So yeah, I've held those pins in with those. You need to put on first your part B2 here, then your bearing, and those will go up against that shaft. Then your bevel gear G2, and just line that up so it fits over that shaft, holds it in place. Get your B2, that goes on, and again the smaller diameter pointing that way. It's the same for this one here, the smaller diameter is also pointing that way. And finish off by putting on your bushing or your bearing 850. Now that's ready to go into the chassis. So on step 18, get your chassis with this side obviously where you can see the gears, those gears in there, so the prop shaft has to drop in, and just make sure that you get each of these lined up correctly. So you want that part B2, I think it was, the plastic washer has got to be inside that housing there. Okay, just turn it round. Yeah, looks like that's all right. Same for the other end. Then it's simply a case of these A6 parts will go over and hold that in place. Simply attach with two 10mm screws. Okay then, so that's the main central chassis complete. You can see I can actually, probably hear it actually rather than see it, turn that prop shaft round, and we're turning both gearboxes at each end, the diffs are turning, so that's all working okay. Quite pleased with that. So as soon as we got to this stage, I think we're kind of halfway through the build. I think we'll call it to a close now, this part 1 of the build guide, and I hope you join me on the second part where, with a bit of luck, we'll be getting this thing finished and up on its wheels. Thanks again. Bye.